I stood at the altar for 3 hours. My fiancé was a no-show. The guests started whispering, their pity turning to mockery. They were saying I'd been left. I was shattered. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, Eleanor, a notoriously strict woman, stood up, took the microphone, and said something no one expected. "Silence, all of you. My son is not coming today. And it's not because he doesn't want to. It's because I had him locked away." Why would a mother do that on her own son's wedding day? The reason made me cry, but not from sadness, from gratitude. The clock in the steeple struck 3. 3 hours. I had been standing at the altar for 3 hours, my feet swollen inside my heels, the bouquet of white roses trembling in my hands, the silence in street. Jude's chapel was no longer respectful. It was a heavy, quiet, thick with pity and venom. Father Michael gave me a tired look and wiped the sweat from his brow with a handkerchief. He leaned in and whispered, "My child, I think we've waited long enough. He's not coming." I shook my head, though deep down, I knew he was right. Liam had promised me forever, just last night. He had sworn this wedding would be the beginning of our new life. How could he do this to me? Suddenly, a cruel murmur broke the stillness. In the front pews, one of Liam's distant aunts leaned toward her neighbor and said, loud enough for me to hear, "I told them all. That boy is too much for a simple orphan girl like her. He must have had second thoughts and run off with a woman of his own class." The guests' stifled laughter felt like knives in my back. I couldn't breathe. Humiliation burned my face. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the stone floor to open up and swallow me whole. My legs gave out, and I nearly collapsed. Bang! A sharp, powerful sound echoed from the main entrance, silencing the laughter instantly. Every head turned toward the massive oak doors. There, silhouetted against the afternoon light, stood Mrs. Eleanor Vance. She wasn't dressed in finery for her only son's wedding. She wore severe black from head to toe, as if attending a funeral. Her face was an emotionless mask of iron. She advanced down the center aisle. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of her silver-tipped cane striking the stone tiles set a terrifying rhythm. No one dared to breathe. I stood frozen, expecting the worst. I had always thought Eleanor hated me for being poor. I was sure she had come to mock me, to say, "I told you so," in front of the whole town. Eleanor ascended the altar steps. She didn't look at me. She walked right past me and stood before the priest's microphone. She snatched it from its stand with a force that made the speakers screech. "Silence, all of you." Her voice boomed through the church, making the attendees tremble. "The show is over. There's nothing more to see here." A man in a tailored suit, a family business partner, stood up, indignant. "Eleanor, this is disrespectful. We've been waiting for Liam for hours. Where is your son? Did he run off?" Eleanor fixed her dark eyes on the man and replied with a coldness that froze everyone's blood. "My son did not run off. Liam is not coming today or tomorrow, and it's not because he doesn't want to be here. It's because I, myself, ordered him to be locked away this morning." A collective gasp swept through the pews. I dropped the bouquet, which fell to the floor with a dull thud. His own mother, locking up the groom on his wedding day? Why? I cried out, breaking my own silence, tears streaming down my cheeks. "He's your son. This is the most important day of his life." Eleanor turned slowly toward me. For the first time in 2 years, her gaze held no contempt. There was something else, something that looked like pain. She came closer, ignoring the hundreds of curious eyes watching us, and spoke just loud enough for everyone to hear the truth. "Because if Liam had walked through that door today, your life would have been over, Ava." "I don't understand," I stammered. "Liam is not the man you think he is," Eleanor said, each word a blow. "He's not a successful entrepreneur. He's a gambling addict. He's sick. He owes millions to very dangerous people." The world began to spin. "That's a lie," I whispered. "It's the truth," she cried, pulling a crumpled paper from her purse and holding it up. "Here is the proof. He was going to marry you today, not for love, but to use your signature. He was going to put the house you inherited from your parents up as collateral to pay his gambling debts. The moment you signed that marriage certificate, you would have been homeless and saddled with an unpayable debt." The guests gasped. I brought my hands to my mouth. My parents' house was the only thing I had in the world. Liam knew that. He had promised we would live there, raise a family. It was all a lie. A scam. Eleanor lowered her voice, and for a second, her iron mask cracked. I would rather be a cruel mother and force my son into a rehabilitation center than allow him to ruin an innocent woman's life. I have saved your future, child. Even if you hate me now, I have saved you. My knees gave way. I didn't faint, because Eleanor, with a speed surprising for her age, caught my arm. Her grip was firm. "Don't you dare cry in front of them," she whispered fiercely in my ear. "Lift your head. You haven't lost a husband. You've shed a burden. Now, let's get out of here." "Where?" I asked, dazed, as Father Michael stared at us, dumbfounded. "To my ranch," Eleanor commanded, striking the floor again with her cane. "My son's creditors believe the wedding happened. They will come looking for you at your house tonight, thinking you're his wife. If you want to live, you will come with me." Without waiting for my answer, she dragged me down the aisle. We passed the guests who had mocked me moments before. Now they lowered their heads in shame. We walked out of the church into the blinding afternoon sun. I didn't know what awaited me at Oak Creek Ranch, or what secrets that woman in black was hiding. But at that moment, getting into her vintage Lincoln, I knew that my life as a simple, love-struck bride had died at that altar. The engine of the old car roared to life, carrying us away from the church and the prying eyes of the town. I sat in the back, my fists clenched on the fabric of my wedding dress, which now felt like a white shroud. Beside me, Eleanor stared straight ahead at the road, her back ramrod straight, her hands resting on her cane. The silence inside the car was suffocating, broken only by my ragged breaths. I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop the car!" I yelled, banging on the window. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You're insane. You just had your own son kidnapped." Eleanor didn't flinch. Without turning her head, she said in a quiet but razor-sharp voice, "If you get out now, Ava, you'll be dead before sunrise." Her words chilled me to the bone. I slumped back against the seat, trembling. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who would want to kill me? I'm just an accountant. I don't have any enemies." Eleanor sighed, a long, weary sound that betrayed the weight on her shoulders. She turned slowly to look at me. "You don't, but my son does. Liam owes a fortune to a man named Marcus Thorne. He's a ruthless loan shark who controls the city's criminal underbelly. Liam promised to pay him today, right after the wedding." "With what money?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "With yours," she said bluntly. "Liam forged documents, made Thorne believe you were a wealthy heiress, and that by marrying you, he'd have full access to the deeds of your family property. Thorne agreed to wait until the wedding night. If he doesn't get his money today, he will come to collect the debt in blood." Nausea rose in my throat. My family property was just a modest old house my parents had left me, and I had just sold it a week ago to pay for this wedding and Liam's supposed investment. "I have nothing," I cried out in rage. "I sold the house. I gave all the money to Liam for his business venture." Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, as if in physical pain. "Then it's worse than I thought. Liam gambled that money away days ago. There isn't a cent left. If Thorne finds you alone and discovers you don't have the money, he will show no mercy. He'll think you were in on the scam." The car turned sharply, leaving the paved road for a bumpy dirt track. In the distance, I saw the imposing silhouette of Oak Creek Ranch. It looked like a dark, solitary stone fortress, surrounded by giant trees casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. "And what do I gain by going with you?" I retorted, wiping my tears angrily. "You're the mother of the monster who ruined me." "You gain protection," Eleanor said, her authoritarian tone returning. "My ranch has high walls and armed men. Thorne won't dare set foot on my land so easily. I'm offering you a roof and safety until the police can find that criminal, and we can clear your name." "And Liam?" I asked, the name leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. "Where is he, really?" "Liam is in a detox clinic across the state line. Incommunicado," she replied. "He won't get out until I say so, but make no mistake, child, I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing this to protect the honor of my family name. I will not allow my son to become an indirect murderer." The car stopped in front of a massive, rusted iron gate. A foreman ran to open it, and the car rolled into the cobblestone courtyard. The main house rose before us, majestic but decaying, with ivy climbing its weathered stone walls. The front door opened, and an older woman in a gray apron appeared. It was Martha, the housekeeper, her face a road map of wrinkles, her expression one of deep concern. We got out of the car. A strong wind blew, lifting the veil I still clutched in my hand and dragging it through the dust. It was a perfect image of my fate, my dreams, dragged through the dirt. "Welcome to Oak Creek," Eleanor said, tapping the ground with her cane. "You'll be safe here, but I warn you, there are rules in this house. Follow them and you will survive. If you try to contact Liam or leave without my permission, I cannot answer for your life." I looked back down the road we'd come. It was getting dark. I knew that out there, a man named Thorne might be looking for me. I had no home, no money, and no husband. This bitter old woman and her fortress were my only option. "I accept," I said, my voice firm as I lifted my chin. "But don't think I'm grateful. I'm only staying until I can get back what your son stole from me." Eleanor looked at me, and for an instant I saw a flicker of respect in her dark eyes. "Martha," she called to the housekeeper, "take the young lady to the blue room and lock all the doors tonight. No one in, no one out." I entered the house, and the heavy sound of the gate closing behind me sounded like a prison sentence. I didn't know that by crossing that threshold, I was stepping into a danger far greater than the one I had left behind. Martha, the housekeeper, opened the door to the blue room with an iron key that looked like it weighed a ton. The room smelled of dried lavender and disuse, as if no one had entered it in years. "You'll sleep here," the woman said in a dry voice, not meeting my eyes. "There are clothes in the closet from when Mrs. Vance was young. Take off that wedding dress immediately. It's bad luck to wear a wedding dress in a house where there was no celebration." I hugged myself, the room's chill seeping into my bones. "Why do you look at me like that, Martha?" I asked, sensing the contempt in her tired eyes. "I haven't done anything. I'm the victim here." The old woman let out a bitter laugh and turned away. "There are no victims here, child. Only the guilty and their accomplices. Because of you, young Liam is locked away like an animal, far from his home." Before I could defend myself, Martha left and slammed the door. I heard the unmistakable sound of the key turning in the lock. "Hey!" I shouted, running to the door and pounding on the wood with my fists. "You can't lock me in! Open up!" "It's for your own safety," came Martha's muffled voice from the other side. "The madam's orders. No one in, no one out until morning." I slumped against the door, sliding to the floor. The reality hit me hard. I wasn't a guest. I was a prisoner. I tore the veil from my head and threw it away. With trembling hands, I took off the white dress that had cost me so much and put on a coarse linen nightgown I found in the closet. Hours passed. Darkness filled the room. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house made my heart jump. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the night silence. Ring, ring. It was the phone downstairs. It rang insistently, over and over, like an emergency alarm. I waited for someone to answer, but the ringing continued to drill into my ears. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. I heard hurried footsteps in the hall, followed by the sharp tap of Eleanor's cane on the floorboards. "Hello," I heard my mother-in-law's voice, deep and tense. There was a long silence. Then Eleanor's voice changed. It no longer sounded authoritarian, but alarmed. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I understand." "No, she's here. Lock all the perimeter gates. Have the men release the dogs, now." I heard her slam the phone down violently. Seconds later, quick footsteps came up the stairs, and the key turned in my door. Eleanor entered the room, a candle in her hand. Her face was pale, illuminated by the flickering flame. "Get up, Ava," she ordered. "We have a problem." "What is it?" I asked, jumping to my feet. "It's not Liam, if that's what you're hoping," she said, moving to the window to pull the heavy curtains shut with a sharp tug. "I just got a call from one of my informants in town." She turned to me, her black eyes glowing with a terrifying intensity. "Half an hour ago, 3 armed men kicked down the door of your old apartment. A knot formed in my stomach. My apartment, my little sanctuary. What? What did they do?" I stammered. "They tore it apart," Eleanor replied coldly, "looking for money, jewelry, anything of value. When they found nothing and didn't find you, they set it on fire." I clapped my hands over my mouth to stifle a scream. "They burned it?" I exclaimed, feeling my legs weaken. Everything I had was in there. The photos of my parents, my memories. Things can be replaced. A life cannot. Eleanor cut me off harshly. "Understand this, Ava. Those men were Thorne's collectors. They went looking for you to collect Liam's debt." If you had gone back to your home after the church, as you wanted, you'd be dead among the ashes right now. Terror paralyzed me. The woman in front of me was not exaggerating. The threat was real, and it had just destroyed my past. "Do they know I'm here?" I asked in a small voice. Eleanor blew out the candle, plunging us into near darkness. "Not yet, but Thorne is no fool. When they see you weren't at your place, they'll start looking at family connections. Sooner or later, they'll look toward this ranch." She came closer and grabbed my shoulders, her fingers digging into my skin. "Listen to me. From this moment on, you and I are at war. Forget the naive bride crying at the altar. If you want to survive, Thorne, you have to be smarter and stronger. I have no money. I have no weapons. I have nothing," I sobbed. Eleanor reached into her skirt pocket and pulled out a cold, metallic object. She pressed it into my hand. It was a small, rusted key. "You don't have money, but you have a brain. This key opens my late husband's study in the East Wing. The ranch's account ledgers are in there. If Liam is telling the truth and Thorne is claiming a real debt, there must be a paper trail. I want you to look." "What am I looking for?" "Anything that can help us negotiate with or destroy Thorne," Eleanor said, walking to the door. "Tomorrow, the siege begins. Rest now, because when the sun rises, you will cease to be a guest and become my ally." Eleanor left and locked the door again. But this time, she didn't turn the key. I was left alone in the dark, clutching the small, rusted key. My home was ashes. My fiancé was a con man. My mother-in-law was an iron-willed general. But as fear coursed through my veins, a new feeling was born in my chest. Rage. They had burned my past. I would not let them burn my future. The next morning, Oak Creek Ranch awoke shrouded in a thick fog and a deathly silence. There were no good mornings or hot breakfasts. In the kitchen, Martha tossed me a dirty rag and a bucket of soapy water. "There's no free lunch in this house, girl," the housekeeper said in her usual sour tone. "If you want to eat, you have to work. The madam ordered you to clean the study in the East Wing, said you have the key." I clutched the small, rusted key Eleanor had given me and nodded without protest. I knew Martha was watching me like a hawk, waiting for me to make a mistake so she could throw me out. I walked down the long hallway to the study's solid oak door. My footsteps echoed on the old wood. When I inserted the key into the lock, the mechanism groaned like a lament. I turned the metal and pushed. The study smelled of stale tobacco and old paper. Bookshelves reached the ceiling, crammed with binders and ledgers. Eleanor had asked me to find traces of the debts, so I began pulling down the heavy, leather-bound volumes. 2 hours passed. My hands were black with dust. The books showed figures for pecan harvests and cattle sales, but nothing suspicious at first glance. However, when I tried to pull out a particularly thick ledger from the bottom shelf, something got stuck. I reached into the dark space behind the books. My fingers touched something cold and smooth. I pulled hard. It wasn't an account book. It was a personal journal, bound in black leather with worn corners. There was no name on the cover. But when I opened it, I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was a nervous, cramped, angular script. It was Liam's handwriting. My heart lurched. I sat on the floor, hidden behind the desk, and began to read. The first few pages were trivial complaints about the boredom of country life, but as I read on, the tone grew dark and venomous. August 12th. She did it again. Cut off my allowance. Says it's for my own good, but I know she enjoys watching me beg. She's a tyrant. I flipped through several pages, looking for something more recent. I stopped on an entry dated 5 years ago. The ink was smeared, as if the writer had been crying or shaking with rage. "Today is the anniversary. Everyone in town thinks Dad died of a heart attack in his sleep, but I know the truth. I was there that night. I heard the argument. She didn't call the doctor in time. She let him die. Eleanor let him die so she could have total control of the ranch. She's a murderer. And one day, I'll make her pay for every second she stole from Dad and me." I slammed the journal shut, feeling like I couldn't breathe. Eleanor, a murderer, let her own husband die? I glanced at the closed door, terrified the matriarch would walk in at any moment. Suddenly, my image of my savior changed. Had she brought me here to protect me from Thorne, or because she needed something from me to cover her own crimes? Was I an ally, or just another pawn in her twisted game? I hid the journal under my blouse, determined to read more later. I had to know the truth. Just then, a dull noise made me jump. Thump, thump, thump. It was coming from the ceiling above me. Footsteps, heavy, slow footsteps, like someone dragging their feet. I froze. Martha had told me explicitly at breakfast that the second floor had been closed off for years, that the beams were rotten, and no one ever went up there. Eleanor was in town meeting with her lawyer, and Martha was in the backyard doing laundry. So who was walking above my head? The footsteps stopped directly over me. Then I heard an unmistakable sound, the scraping of a chair or a heavy piece of furniture. Curiosity and fear warred within me. I slipped out of the study, closing the door quietly. I looked up at the grand staircase leading to the second floor. It was shrouded in shadow, covered in dust. A red velvet rope blocked the way with a sign that read, "No entry." I took the first step. The wood creaked. I waited. Silence. I took another and another. My own breathing was the only sound I could hear. When I reached the second floor landing, I saw a long hallway with several closed doors. Everything looked abandoned, covered in white sheets like ghosts. But at the end of the hall, under the last door, I saw something that chilled my blood. A thin line of faint, yellow light, like from a candle. And then a shadow moved, cutting across the sliver of light. Someone was living up there. Someone hiding in the dark. I crept forward, hugging the wall. I was just a few feet from the door when a cold, bony hand grabbed my ankle from behind. I screamed and spun around. It was Martha. She was crouched on the stairs, her eyes wide, a finger pressed to her lips. "Get down here now," she whispered with terrifying intensity. "If the madam finds out you came up here, you won't live to tell the tale." "There's someone in there, Martha," I said, trembling, pointing to the door with the light. I heard footsteps. I saw the light. The housekeeper looked at me with a mixture of fear and warning. She grabbed my arm and dragged me down the stairs with surprising strength. "You saw nothing, girl," she hissed, pushing me toward the kitchen. "In this house, the walls have ears and the shadows have teeth. If you value your life, you'll forget that door and forget what you think you heard. Because there are secrets at Oak Creek that are better left buried." She let me go and went back to her chores as if nothing had happened. But I knew what I had seen. Eleanor was lying. Liam hated her for a reason. And upstairs, in the forbidden room, someone was breathing in secret. The trap was closing in around me. A gut-wrenching scream tore through the dawn. It wasn't a scream of fear, but of profound pain. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Martha. I jumped out of bed, momentarily forgetting the fear of the forbidden room upstairs, and ran down the stairs. The front door was wide open, the cold morning air flooding the foyer. In the cobblestone courtyard, Martha was on her knees, sobbing into her hands. Lying motionless beside her were the 2 German shepherds that guarded the ranch. There was no blood, but their bodies were rigid, with white foam at their mouths. "They've killed them," Martha wailed. "Poor animals, they never hurt anyone." I approached, a lump forming in my throat. They had been poisoned. As I looked up, I saw something that froze my blood. Stuck in the solid wood of the front door, right at eye level, was a black-handled switchblade. The blade pierced a dirty piece of paper. "Don't touch that," a voice commanded from behind me. Mrs. Vance appeared in the doorway. She was dressed impeccably as always, but her face was paler than usual. She walked to the door with a steady gait, ignoring Martha's cries, and yanked the knife out with a sharp tug. She unfolded the paper. I moved close enough to read the letters scrawled in red ink. "The wedding was canceled, but the debt is still alive. You have 1 week to pay the principal plus interest. If you don't, the next ones won't be the dogs. It will be the new lady of the house. Sincerely, Thorne." Thorne knew I was here. The threat was direct. Eleanor crumpled the paper in her fist with rage. "Jed!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the courtyard. The ranch foreman came running from the stables, his hat in his hand. "Yes, ma'am?" "I want all the men armed," Eleanor ordered, her voice the cold, calculating tone of a general in battle. "Get the shotguns from the gun safe. Double the shifts, watch the perimeter day and night. If you see an unfamiliar car approach the gate, fire a warning shot. If it doesn't stop, shoot out the tires." "But ma'am," the man stammered, that's war." "They started this war when they killed my dogs," she cut him off. Now go, move." The men scrambled to follow her orders. The courtyard transformed into a military camp in seconds. Eleanor turned to me. "Get inside, Ava, and stay away from the windows." That night, dinner was a funeral. Martha served the soup with red, swollen eyes. The silence in the dining room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Outside, the wind howled, and every so often we'd hear the distant barking of neighboring farm dogs, a grim reminder of our own loss. Eleanor ate slowly, her eyes fixed on her plate. I couldn't manage a single bite. The image of the knife in the door and the diary I'd read the day before spun in my head. "You knew this would happen," I said suddenly, breaking the silence. Eleanor set her spoon down gently. "I knew Thorne would come to collect. He's a businessman, in his own filthy way." "In Liam's diary," I began, and I saw Eleanor's eyes lock onto me like daggers. "He wrote that you're dangerous, that you let your husband die to take everything for yourself." Martha gasped from the kitchen, but Eleanor remained calm. She wiped her mouth with her napkin and stared at me. "So, you've been reading things that don't concern you," she said in a quiet voice, far too quiet. "I need to know who is protecting me," I retorted, holding her gaze, though my hands trembled under the table. "Is it true? Did you let Liam's father die?" Eleanor stood and walked to the fireplace. The firelight illuminated her severe profile. "My husband, Liam's father, was a charming man. He had an easy smile and a weak heart," she began, staring into the flames. "But he had the same poison in his blood as my son. The gambling." She turned to me, and I saw an infinite sadness in her stone-like face. "He lost land, he lost cattle, he lost the money for Liam's education. One night he had a heart attack after losing a colossal bet. I was there, yes, but I didn't let him die out of cruelty, Ava." She took a step toward me, leaning heavily on her cane. I tried to give him his medication, but he knocked it out of my hand. He was drunk and furious over his loss. He died screaming curses at his own luck. Liam was just a boy, listening from behind the door. He only heard the shouting. He didn't see how I tried to save his father until the very end. He has hated me ever since. And ever since, I have sworn I would not let that vice destroy what little we had left. "That's why you're so hard on Liam," I whispered, beginning to understand. "I am not hard for pleasure. I am hard because I have spent my life cleaning up the messes of the men in this family," Eleanor said bitterly. "And now I am cleaning up the mess he made of you." At that moment, a loud boom shook the house. Bang! It came from outside. It wasn't thunder. It was a shotgun blast. Eleanor and I looked at each other. The fear vanished from her face, replaced by a fierce determination. "Stay here," she ordered, walking to a corner cabinet to retrieve an old revolver. "Thorne has come for dinner." "I'm not staying hidden while we're under attack," I said, rising from my chair. A strange courage was born in my chest. "If they're coming for me, I'm going to face them." Eleanor looked at me and gave a slight nod, loading the gun. "Then don't leave my side. Tonight we either defend Oak Creek or we lose everything." The echo of the gunshot faded, leaving a ringing in my ears. Eleanor kicked open the front door, revolver held high. I followed, trembling but not stopping, grabbing a heavy iron fire poker as my only defense. In the courtyard, Jed, the foreman, was reloading his shotgun with nervous hands. There was no one else, just dust settling on the driveway. "What happened?" Eleanor demanded, lowering her gun but not its safety. "A black SUV, ma'am," Jed said, his voice shaky. "They were cutting the chain on the gate. I fired in the air to scare them. They sped off toward town, but they yelled they'd be back with more men before sunrise." Eleanor nodded, her face hardened with tension. "You did well. Double the guard. No one sleeps tonight." We went back inside, and Eleanor bolted the door with 3 locks. She leaned against the wood, breathing heavily. For the first time, I saw her hands were shaking. The Iron Lady was starting to rust under the pressure. "We won't survive a siege, Ava," she admitted, looking me in the eyes. "My men are ranchers, not soldiers. Thorne's men are professional criminals. If they get in, they'll kill us all and loot the house." "Then let's not let them get in," I said, feeling my accountant's brain start working faster than my fear. "If Thorne wants money, let's give him money. You have land, you have cattle. The ranch is worth a fortune." Eleanor let out a dry, bitter laugh. She walked to the study and poured herself a glass of bourbon with trembling hands. "That's the tragedy, child. I am rich in land, but poor in cash." All our liquid assets have been drained over the last few years, paying off Liam's silent debts. I don't even have $5,000 in the safe to pay the ranch hands next week. If I sell the land now, under duress, Thorne or his associates will buy it for pennies on the dollar. That's what they want to corner us. To take my family's legacy for nothing. I walked over to her and gently but firmly took the glass from her hand. You said Liam was stealing from you, but something doesn't add up. Liam is a gambler, yes, but he's disorganized, chaotic. To ruin a ranch like this takes consistency. It takes systematic embezzlement. Eleanor looked at me, her brow furrowed. What are you suggesting? Annie for. What are you suggesting? I'm an accountant, Eleanor. I've audited bankrupt companies that looked solid on the surface. Let me see the ledgers. The real ones, not the ones Liam left in his room, but the ones your administrator handles. Eleanor hesitated for a second, sizing me up. Then she pulled a heavy keychain from her pocket and unlocked a secret drawer in her desk. She took out 3 thick, blue-covered ledgers. Our administrator, Mr. Davies, brings me these books every month. He's worked for my family for 20 years. He's completely trustworthy. When it comes to money, no one is completely trustworthy, I replied, opening the first book on the table. We spent the next 4 hours immersed in numbers. The candle burned down, dripping wax onto the wood. My eyes burned, but I couldn't stop. Eleanor watched in silence, waiting for my verdict. Suddenly, my finger stopped on one line, then another, and another. Here it is, I whispered. What did you find? Eleanor asked, leaning over my shoulder. Look at this. Every month on the 15th, there's a cash outflow under machinery maintenance and fertilizer. They're fixed amounts, $10,000 and $15,000. The machinery is old, it breaks down a lot, she justified. No, Eleanor. Look at the attached invoices. They're from a company called Northern Agricultural Services. But if you check last year's ledger, that company didn't exist. And if you look here, at the actual workshop expenses, the repairs are paid separately to the mechanic in town. I looked up to meet her eyes. You're paying twice. Someone has been siphoning money from this ranch every single month for 3 years, disguising it as operating expenses. This isn't Liam playing poker. This is a slow bleed. Someone in this house is stealing a fortune from you, right under your nose. Eleanor turned pale. She sank into her chair as if she'd been physically struck. Davies, she murmured, her voice choked. He handles the accounts, he makes the payments. He told me the drought had driven up the price of fertilizer. Does Davies have access to the bank accounts? I asked. He has power of attorney to make minor payments. I signed it when I fell ill last year. Then there's Thorne's money, I said with certainty. Davies isn't just robbing you. I bet he's the one who told Thorne the ranch was vulnerable. He created the cash flow crisis so you couldn't fight back. Eleanor's face shifted from shock to fury in an instant. She stood up, regaining the imposing stature that had terrified me in the church. That bastard is due here first thing in the morning with the weekly report. If we confront him without solid proof, he'll run, I warned. And if he runs, he'll take whatever money is left. We need him to confess. We need to know where he's hiding what he stole. What do you propose? Eleanor asked. She was no longer speaking to me like an unwanted daughter-in-law, but as a partner. I smiled. A cold smile I didn't know I was capable of. We're going to set a trap. We'll make him believe we've found something far more valuable than money. Something worth risking coming into this house at night for, even with Thorne's men lurking outside. Eleanor looked at me, and for the first time, a faint smile curved her severe lips. You have the same calculating look as my grandfather. All right, Ava, let's do it. Tomorrow, Davies will fall. Outside, the wind howled like a hungry wolf, but inside the study, fear had transformed into strategy. The alliance of women had just been born. The sun had barely risen when the administrator, Davies, entered the study. He was agitated, sweat plastering his shirt to his back, his eyes darting from side to side like a cornered animal. Mrs. Vance, he said without greeting, slapping the desk with his palm. Thorne's men have cut off the water supply. If we don't sign over the land today, they'll burn the barns. I have the buyer on the phone. He's offering cash, right now. Eleanor, seated in her leather armchair with a calm I knew was feigned, slowly shook her head. We are not selling, Mr. Davies. Put those papers away. Davies's mouth fell open in disbelief. Are you insane? They're going to kill us. We don't have the cash to pay your son's debt. We no longer have a cash problem. I interjected, stepping out from the shadows of a bookshelf. In my hands, I held an old wooden box, secured with a rusted padlock. A miracle happened last night. Davies's eyes fixed on the box, greed instantly shone in his gaze. "What is that?" he asked, his voice dropping. Ava was cleaning the chimney and found a loose stone in the wall. Eleanor lied with astonishing naturalness. "It's my grandfather's emergency reserve, gold coins." I dropped the box on the desk. It landed with a heavy, metallic thud. Davies took a step forward, reaching out, but I placed my hand on the lid. "Don't touch it," I said firmly. "There's enough gold in here to pay Thorne 3 times over and save the ranch. But we have a problem. We can't go into town to exchange it with those thugs watching the gate." Davies ran his tongue over his dry lips. His mind was working at lightning speed. "I can get it out," he offered quickly, a helpful smile on his face that made my skin crawl. "My car is old. It won't attract attention. I'll take the gold to the bank, exchange it, and bring back the cash to pay Thorne this afternoon." Eleanor and I exchanged a quick glance. The fish had taken the bait. "It's too risky, Davies," Eleanor said. "We'll keep it in the office safe until tomorrow. When the guard changes, we'll try then." "It's madness to leave that here," he insisted, desperate. "If Thorne gets in, he'll steal everything." "Let me do it, ma'am. I'll protect it with my life." I said no, Eleanor decreed. "You may leave. Come back tomorrow." Davies left the study reluctantly, casting one last, longing look at the wooden box. "Do you think he'll be back?" I asked as soon as the door closed. "A thief never passes up an opportunity," Eleanor replied, reloading her revolver. "Tonight, we sleep in shifts." Night fell over the ranch like a heavy shroud. We turned off all the lights to pretend we were asleep. Jed, the foreman, hid behind the curtains in the study. Eleanor and I waited in the hallway in absolute silence. 2 hours passed. 3. Just as my eyelids were growing heavy, we heard a noise. Click. Someone was picking the lock on the back service door. Stealthy footsteps crossed the kitchen and moved toward the study. We waited. We heard the creak of the study door opening. Then, the sound of someone breaking the padlock on the wooden box. And then the silence was shattered by a cry of pure fury. "Rocks! They're damned rocks!" Eleanor flipped on the hall light and we burst in. Davies stood at the desk with the open box. Inside was no gold, only river stones and old pieces of iron. Seeing us, he tried to run for the window, but Jed stepped out from behind the curtains and aimed his shotgun squarely at his chest. "Stay right there, you traitor," the foreman growled. Davies raised his hands, trembling. His mask of the faithful employee had completely crumbled. "This is a trap," he stammered. "You witches. The only trap here is the one you set for us," I said, throwing the real ledgers onto the desk. "We know everything, Davies. The phantom fertilizer, the fake repairs. You've been robbing this family for 3 years. Eleanor advanced on him, her cane tapping the floor. She seemed to tower over him. "How much did Thorne pay you to leave us defenseless?" she demanded, her voice like thunder. "Speak, Davies." Cornered, he let out a nervous, evil laugh. "Thorne didn't have to pay me anything. I went to him. I told him your son was an idiot and this ranch was ripe for the picking. You're just 2 women, alone. This land needs a man to run it." "Where is the money you stole?" I demanded. "The real money." "Spent," Davies spat. "And what's left is far from here. You'll never get it back. And when Thorne gets in, he'll kill you both, and I'll get my commission." "Jed," Eleanor ordered coldly, "take him to the barn and tie him up securely. Tomorrow we hand him over to the police along with the ledgers." Jed grabbed Davies by the collar and dragged him toward the door. Davies kicked and screamed, "You're fools! Thorne isn't alone. He has someone else on the inside, someone of your own blood." Eleanor froze. "What did you say?" she asked, but Jed had already hauled the man out into the courtyard. We were left alone in the study. The victory tasted bitter. We had caught the thief, but his final words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "Someone of my own blood," Eleanor repeated in a whisper, and for the first time, I saw terror in her eyes. "Ava, if Davies is telling the truth, Liam didn't escape the rehab center. Someone had to have helped him." At that moment, the phone rang, a long, agonizing ring in the dead of night. Eleanor answered. She listened for a few seconds, and the receiver slipped from her hand, dangling from its cord. "What is it?" I asked, shaking her. "That was the state police," Eleanor said, her voice dead. The patrol car transferring Liam to another facility was ambushed an hour ago. The officers are wounded. Liam is gone. And Thorn? Thorn took the officers' weapons. They're coming here, I understood instantly. Both of them. Eleanor nodded, grabbing her revolver with renewed force. This isn't about a debt anymore, Ava. It's an execution. Get ready. Tonight, it all ends. The storm broke over Oak Creek Ranch with a violence that rattled the windows. A nearby lightning strike lit up the living room for a split second, and then the entire house was plunged into absolute darkness. The power was out. "Martha!" Eleanor shouted from the hallway. "Bring the candles, quickly!" I was in the kitchen searching for matches when I heard a sound that wasn't thunder. It was the sharp crack of breaking glass. It came from the back window, the one overlooking the old orchard. I stood motionless, holding my breath. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, my grip tight. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice trembling in the gloom. No answer, but I heard heavy, ragged breathing like a wounded animal. Another flash of lightning illuminated the room, and I saw a silhouette framed in the broken window. A man was climbing inside, soaked by the rain and covered in mud. He stood up slowly and wiped the water from his face. When he looked at me, I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Hello, my love," he said in a hoarse, mocking voice. "Aren't you going to say hello to your husband?" It was Liam, but not the Liam I knew. His suit was in tatters. He had a deep cut on his cheek, and his eyes were bloodshot, wide with a manic energy. "Liam," I whispered, backing away until I hit the table. "You're supposed to be in jail." He let out a dry laugh that sounded more like a bark. "Jails aren't built for people with my connections, Ava. Thorn helped me out of that police transport. It was quite a show. But now I owe him even more, and you're going to help me pay it." He took a step toward me. I raised the knife. "Don't come any closer," I shouted. "I know the truth. I know you only wanted to marry me to steal my parents' inheritance." Liam stopped and smiled, baring his teeth. "Well, look at that. The little mouse has a roar. Yes, Ava, I needed your signature, I needed your house, but we don't have time for legal paperwork anymore. Thorn is outside waiting for his money, and if I don't walk out with a bag full of cash or jewels in 10 minutes, he's coming in to burn this place down with all of us inside." "There is no money," I said, trying to buy time. "Davies, the administrator, stole everything. Your mother is broke." Liam's face twisted from mockery to pure fury. He lunged at me with terrifying speed. I tried to stab him, but he grabbed my wrist and twisted it until the knife clattered to the floor. He pinned me against the refrigerator. "Don't lie to me," he screamed in my face, spittle flying. "That old witch always has a stash. Grandma's jewels, the silver bars. Tell me where the safe is." "Let me go!" I yelled, struggling to break free, but he was high on adrenaline and desperation. "Tell me where it is, or I swear I'll kill you right here," he roared, his hands tightening around my neck. "Let her go, Liam, now." Eleanor's voice echoed from the kitchen doorway, as firm and commanding as a thunderclap. Liam spun around, using me as a human shield, but he didn't let go. Eleanor stood there, lit only by the candle Martha held behind her. In her right hand, the old revolver was aimed directly at her son's chest. Her hand was steady. "Mother," Liam sneered, "always so dramatic. Are you going to shoot your only son? Your heir?" "You stopped being my son the day you tried to sell out this family to criminals," Eleanor replied coldly. "Let the girl go." "I need the money, Mother," Liam said, his arm tightening against my throat. I started to cough, gasping for air. "Thorn isn't playing games. If I don't pay him, he'll cut my fingers off one by one. Give me the combination to the safe in the study." "There is nothing in the safe," Eleanor said, taking a step forward. "Davies took what little there was. We're on our own." Liam shoved me violently to the side. I fell, hitting my shoulder hard. He used the distraction to lunge at his mother. "Liar!" he howled. Eleanor tried to fire, but Liam was faster. He slapped her hand, and the revolver went flying, skittering across the floor and disappearing under a cabinet. Liam grabbed his own mother by the shoulders and shook her violently. "You've always despised me," he screamed. "You let Dad die, and now you want to watch me die. Give it to me. Give me my inheritance." "Liam, stop!" Martha cried, dropping the candle. Darkness swallowed us again, broken only by flashes of lightning. I heard the sound of a body falling and Eleanor's cry of pain. I crawled across the floor in the dark, searching for the revolver, the knife, anything. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of the gun. I grabbed it with both hands. "Freeze!" I yelled, aiming toward the sounds of the struggle. A flash of lightning illuminated the scene. Liam had Eleanor on the floor, his hands around her neck. Seeing me with the gun, he stopped and raised his hands, panting. "Ava," he said, his tone shifting to one of pathetic pleading. "You won't do it. You love me. We were going to get married. It's me, you're Liam. I'm sick. I need help. Put the gun down." For a second, I saw the man I had fallen in love with. I saw his sad eyes. My finger hesitated on the trigger. That second of doubt was my mistake. The kitchen door was kicked open with a brutal crack, shattering the hinges. 3 armed men in black ski masks burst in with powerful flashlights that blinded us. Behind them, a tall, heavy-set figure walked in calmly, clapping slowly. "Bravo, bravo," a deep, gravelly voice said. What a touching family reunion. It was Thorn. Liam scrambled to his feet and ran to him. "Thorn! They're here! They have the jewels hidden! Make them talk!" Thorn looked at Liam with disgust, then at me, still on the floor with the gun trembling in my hands. One of his men walked over and wrenched the revolver from my grasp with a sharp blow. "Time's up," Thorn said, pulling out a cigarette. "Nobody leaves here until I have my money, and if it doesn't show up, well, tonight, there's going to be a massacre at Oak Creek." We were trapped. No weapons, no lights, and at the mercy of the wolves. Thorn dragged a wooden chair to the center of the kitchen and sat down with a terrifying calm. His 3 men, armed with automatic pistols, blocked the exits. The air smelled of dampness, sweat, and danger. "All right, family," Thorn said, lighting his cigarette with a gold lighter. "The show's over. I want the money, and I want it before I finish this cigarette." Liam, shaking like a leaf, approached his mother, who lay on the floor, propped up by Martha. "Tell him where it is, Mother," he screamed, his voice breaking with hysteria. "Stop being stubborn. Thorn doesn't mess around. Give him the combination to the study safe." Eleanor wiped a trickle of blood from her forehead with the back of her hand. She looked up at her son with a gaze full of infinite disappointment. "There is no money, Liam, I told you. Davies took it all. All that's left is debt and shame. And you are my greatest shame." Liam let out a cry of frustration and kicked a copper pot on the floor. The metallic clang made us all jump. "You're lying," he howled. "You always lie to control me. Do you want to see me dead?" Thorn sighed, bored. He made a lazy gesture to one of his goons. "Make the old woman talk." The man in black advanced on Eleanor. Martha tried to step between them, shouting and waving her arms, but the goon shoved her against the wall with ease. Martha crumpled, clutching her hip and groaning in pain. "Don't touch her," I yelled, trying to get up, but another of the men aimed his pistol directly at my head. "Stay put, dollface," Thorn warned. "Your turn will come." The first man grabbed Eleanor by the collar of her black dress and hauled her up as if she were a rag doll. Eleanor, despite her age, spat in his face. "Coward," she hissed. The man raised his hand to strike her, but Liam stepped in. For a second, I thought he was going to defend his mother. I thought there was some humanity left in him. I was wrong. Liam pushed the goon aside and grabbed Eleanor by the shoulders, shaking her violently. "Enough with the pride," he screamed inches from her face. "Sign the papers to hand over the ranch. If we give the land to Thorn, he'll let us go. Sign, or I swear I'll make you myself." Eleanor looked him in the eye with a deep sadness. "I would rather see this house burn than gift it to a criminal because of a traitorous son. You don't have my blood, Liam. You have poison in your veins." Blinded by rage, Liam shoved his mother with all his might. Eleanor lost her balance, tripped on the rug, and fell backward. Her head struck the stone corner of the fireplace with a sickening, wet crack. "No," I screamed. Eleanor lay motionless on the floor. A dark pool began to spread beneath her gray hair. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Thorn leaned forward, intrigued. Liam looked at his own hands, then at his still mother, and took a horrified step back, but made no move to help her. "That's it," Thorn said, dropping his cigarette and grinding it out. "She's no use to me alive anymore. Search the house. Tear down the walls if you have to. Find the money." The men began to move. Liam remained frozen, muttering nonsense. Something inside me snapped. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, white rage. I looked around. To my right, On a side table was a heavy, antique candelabra made of solid iron. No one was watching me. They all thought I was the weak daughter-in-law, the useless victim. I rose slowly. My fingers closed around the cold metal of the candelabra. Liam turned to me, crocodile tears in his eyes. "Ava, I didn't want to. She made me." I didn't let him finish. With a scream that came from the depths of my soul, I raised the candelabra and brought it down with all my strength on Liam's head. Crack! The sound echoed like a gunshot. Liam collapsed like a sack of potatoes, unconscious before he hit the floor. Thorn jumped up from his chair, surprised, and pulled a pistol from his belt. "Well, well, the kitten has claws," he sneered. But I didn't stop. I knew I couldn't win a gunfight. I knew I only had one chance. "To the cellar!" I yelled at Martha. "Now!" I hurled the candelabra at the oil lamp hanging from the ceiling. The glass shattered, and burning oil rained down on the wooden table and one of the goons, who began screaming and batting at the flames. Chaos erupted. Smoke, screams, and random gunshots. Taking advantage of the confusion, I grabbed Eleanor's arms. Martha, finding a reserve of strength, helped me. We dragged the matriarch across the floor toward the pantry door, where I knew the hidden entrance to the old root cellar was. "Stop them!" Thorn roared through the smoke. A bullet splintered the doorframe just as we pushed Eleanor into the darkness of the stone steps. "Get in, Martha!" I ordered. The housekeeper dove inside. I looked back one last time. Liam was still on the floor, bleeding, as the fire began to lick at the curtains. I slammed the solid oak door and threw the iron bolt, just as a body slammed against it from the other side. "Open up!" the men shouted, pounding on the wood. We were trapped in the dark with a wounded old woman, no apparent way out, and the house burning down above our heads. But for the first time, I was in control. The pounding on the pantry door thundered above us. The wood groaned under the force of the blows from Thorn's men. I knew the iron bolt wouldn't hold for long. "Help me, Martha," I hissed, grabbing Eleanor under the arms. "We have to get her down before they break through." The housekeeper, trembling but obedient, took the matriarch's feet. Together, we carried Eleanor's dead weight down the stairs into the absolute blackness of the cellar. My feet slipped on the damp stone steps. The air smelled of mold, soured wine, and fear. Reaching the dirt floor, we laid Eleanor down gently. She moaned, putting a hand to her bloody head. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Where are we?" she murmured, her voice thick. "We're in hell, but we're still alive," I answered, wiping cold sweat from my brow. "Martha, where's the tunnel entrance? You said you knew the way." Martha ran to the back of the cellar, feeling along the brick walls in desperation. "It's here, I swear, behind the old wine racks. My grandfather used it to hide liquor during Prohibition." Above, we heard a terrible crash, splintering wood, metal against stone. "They're in," Martha whispered, frozen with terror. "Get them!" I heard Thorn's voice roar from the kitchen, filtering down the stairwell. "I want the women alive. First one who touches them dies." Heavy footsteps began descending the stone stairs. We saw the beams of their flashlights dancing on the walls, closing in fast. "Move that rack now!" I yelled at Martha, rushing to help her. We pushed the heavy oak cabinet full of dusty bottles with all our might. My muscles screamed. The rack scraped across the floor, revealing a dark, narrow opening in the brick wall, a black mouth promising salvation. "Inside!" I ordered. We dragged Eleanor into the tunnel just as the goons' boots hit the cellar floor. "There they are!" one of them yelled. "They're going into the wall!" "Push the rack back!" I shouted at Martha. From inside the tunnel, we pulled on the cabinet to close the entrance. The rack slid back, blocking the men's view and plunging us into total, suffocating darkness. Seconds later, we felt the blows on the other side of the wood. Thorn's men were trying to move the cabinet, but from our position, we had managed to jam one of the wheels with a loose stone. "Open up, you damn rats!" one of them shouted, banging on the wood with the butt of his gun. I flicked the lighter I had in my pocket, the one I'd used on the lamp upstairs. The small flame illuminated the tunnel. It was a narrow passage with a low ceiling and rotting wooden beams that looked ready to collapse. Cobwebs hung like ancient wedding veils. Eleanor leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Blood trickled down her temple, staining her lace collar. "Liam," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I left him up there, with the fire. Liam made his choice, I said harshly, though I felt sick to my stomach. He tried to kill you, Eleanor. Right now, our priority is getting out of here. The tunnel leads to the edge of the woods near the river, Martha said, catching her breath. But no one's been through it in decades. There could be cave-ins. It's that or die at Thorne's hands, I decreed. We started moving. The ground was uneven and littered with debris. Martha led the way. I helped Eleanor walk, supporting her weight while keeping the lighter's flame alive. We walked for what felt like hours, though it was likely only minutes. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. Suddenly, Martha stopped dead. No, she moaned. It can't be. I brought the light forward. Ahead of us, the tunnel ended abruptly. An ancient cave-in of earth and enormous rocks completely blocked the path. There was no way out. We were trapped in a subterranean dead end. Eleanor sank to the ground, exhausted. "This is it," she said weakly. "We're going to be buried alive here, just like my grandfather always feared." I looked back into the darkness we'd come from. In the distance, I could hear rhythmic pounding and the sound of splintering wood. Thorne's men were destroying the cabinet. They would be in soon. We were cornered, a wall of rock in front of us, murderers behind us. My accountant's mind went into overdrive, searching for a balance sheet, a solution, a way out of the red. I looked up at the tunnel ceiling. In this section, tree roots pushed through the packed earth. We were close to the surface. "We are not dying here," I said, feeling a strange calm. "Martha, you said this was a bootlegger's tunnel. There has to be ventilation." Martha nodded, pointing upward. "There's an air shaft a little ways back, but it's very narrow. Only a child could fit." I looked up and saw the shaft. It was a vertical brick chute, barely wide enough for a slender person. "I can fit," I said, kicking off my shoes. "I'm going up." "You're crazy," Eleanor exclaimed, grabbing my hand. "If you get out, they'll find you. The woods will be crawling with his men." "It's our only chance," I replied, squeezing her cold fingers. "If I stay here, we all die. If I get out, I can get help." "Help?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "From who? The local sheriff is bought or dead. No one is coming for us." "Then I'll be the help myself," I said, looking her in the eye with the same determination she had shown in the church. "You taught me to be strong, Eleanor. Now let me save you." Without waiting for a reply, I wedged myself into the air shaft. Bracing my back and feet against the brick walls, I began to climb toward the surface, toward the night, toward the danger. I was leaving the safety of the earth to face the wolf alone in his own territory. My fingers were raw by the time I pushed aside the metal grate and pulled myself to the surface. The cold night air hit my face, clearing the dust from my lungs. I was in the backwoods, hidden among the bushes. A few hundred yards away, Oak Creek Ranch was burning. Flames shot from the living room windows, lighting up the night like a giant torch. I heard shouting from the house. It was Thorne's men. "Tear up the floorboards. They have to be down there." I had no time. In minutes, they would find Eleanor and Martha. I had to stop them. But I was alone, unarmed, against an armed crew. I had to use my best weapon, my mind. I crawled through the tall grass toward the front of the ranch. Thorne's black SUV was there, engine idling, driver's door open. The driver was gone, probably inside helping with the search. I ran, crouched low, and slid into the vehicle. It smelled of expensive leather and smoke. I frantically searched the glove compartment. Nothing. I looked on the passenger seat, and there it was. A satellite phone. I grabbed it with trembling hands. I knew calling the local sheriff was useless. I needed a higher authority. I dialed the emergency number for the state troopers, praying for a signal. "State police, what's your emergency?" "This is Ava from Oak Creek Ranch," I said, speaking quickly and clearly. "We are under attack. There are armed men, a fire, and hostages. The ringleader is Marcus Thorne. Send every available unit. It's a massacre." "Ma'am, stay calm. We're dispatching." I hung up. They were coming, but they would be too late. I needed to buy time. I needed Thorne to stop the attack now. I looked at the phone. It was time for the biggest gamble of my life. I dialed the ranch's landline, praying the line hadn't burned out. 1 ring, 2, 3. "Who the hell is this?" A voice barked on the other end. It was Thorne, answering his victim's phone like he owned the place. I took a deep breath, swallowed my fear, and changed my voice, making it lower, colder, more corporate. "Thorn," I said curtly, "I'm told you're making a mess of my future property." There was a silence on the other end. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice suspicious. "I represent the Northern Holdings Consortium," I lied, improvising. "We've been in negotiations with the bank to purchase that land for months, and now I hear some second-rate loan shark is burning down my investment." "I don't do business with ghosts," Thorn growled, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. "This land is mine. The old woman owes me." "The old woman owes you nothing worth what I'm offering," I cut in aggressively. "Listen to me. My employer is very interested in Oak Creek. We're offering double whatever you expect to get selling off pecans. Cash payment. Tomorrow morning." I heard Thorn's heavy breathing. Greed was his weakness, and I had just laid out a feast. "Double," he repeated. "Double. But I have one condition. I want the house intact, and the women alive. I need their legal signatures for a clean transfer. If you touch a hair on the old woman or the girl, the deal is off, and I will send my own people to hunt you down. And believe me, Thorn, my people don't use rusty pistols." The silence stretched. I could hear his goons in the background, still trying to break through the cellar floor. "Stop!" Thorn suddenly yelled, pulling the phone from his mouth. "Stop everything, no one fires." My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. It had worked. He'd taken the bait. "I'm listening," Thorn said, returning to the phone. "How do we make the exchange?" "Wait for me in the courtyard," I ordered. "I'm on my way, and you'd better have your dogs on a leash." I hung up. I slumped against the leather seat, shaking uncontrollably. I had bought them a few minutes. Thorn would halt the execution, waiting for his phantom payday. But the moment he saw me appear with empty hands, he would kill me without a second thought. I had to walk into the courtyard and face him. I had to be the bait to give the police time to arrive. I got out of the car and walked toward the firelight. My legs felt like lead, but I kept my head high. As I reached the center of the cobblestone courtyard, I saw Thorn emerge from the house. He was followed by his men, who were dragging Eleanor and Martha. They had gotten them out of the cellar. Thorn saw me. He squinted, searching for the cars of my supposed associates. When he saw I was alone, his face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. "You," he whispered, understanding the deception. "You were the one on the phone." "Let my family go, Thorn," I said, my voice steady, planting myself in front of him. "It's over." Thorn let out a hysterical laugh and pulled his pistol. "It's over, you stupid girl. You have nothing. There is no consortium. There is no money. There's just you and your big mouth. I'm going to enjoy killing you slowly." He raised the gun, aiming at my chest. I closed my eyes, waiting for the impact. But what came wasn't a bullet. It was the sound of sirens. In the distance, on the highway, red and blue lights flashed in the darkness, getting closer at incredible speed. The sound grew into a deafening wail. "It's the state troopers," one of the goons yelled. "Let's go, boss." Thorn, pale with rage, gave me one last look. "This isn't over," he roared. He tried to run for his SUV, but I launched myself at him. I wasn't thinking. I was just acting. I wrapped my arms around his leg, tackling him to the ground. "Let me go, you bitch," he screamed, hitting me on the head with the butt of his gun. I felt a sharp pain and hot blood on my face, but I didn't let go. I gritted my teeth and dug my nails into his ankle. "You're not going anywhere," I screamed. "You're going to pay." Thorn aimed the gun at my head, ready to fire. Bang. A shot rang out, but it wasn't Thorn's. His pistol flew from his hand. He screamed, clutching his shattered wrist. I looked toward the entrance. A state trooper stood there, his gun smoking, surrounded by patrol cars blocking the exit. "Hands in the air," a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "You are surrounded." I collapsed onto the cobblestones, exhausted, as officers swarmed the yard, cuffing Thorn and his men. Amid the chaos and flashing lights, I saw Eleanor. She was hurt, filthy, and leaning on Martha, but she was looking at me. And in the middle of all that hell, she smiled. We had survived. The dawn broke in shades of red and gold, illuminating the damp ashes and the debris of the battle in the ranch's courtyard. Silence had returned to Oak Creek, but it was a different kind of silence, no longer of loneliness, but of hard-won peace. The police took Thorn and his men away. But the most painful moment came when 2 officers led Liam out of the house. His hands were cuffed behind his back. His head bowed. As he passed us, He stopped, looked up, and sought his mother's eyes. "Mother," he pleaded, his voice broken, the voice of a little boy she must have remembered from better times. "Don't let them take me. I'm your blood. I'm all you have left." Eleanor, sitting in a patio chair while a paramedic bandaged her head, stood with difficulty. She leaned on her cane and walked until she stood before her son. There was no hatred in her eyes, only an infinite sadness and an unbreakable resolve. "You are my blood, Liam," she said softly, stroking her son's dirty cheek. "But you stopped being my family a long time ago. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't try to kill their own mother." "I did it for us," he cried desperately. "You did it for you," she corrected him. "And now you must pay for your mistakes. I gave you life, but I cannot give you my conscience. Goodbye, my son." Eleanor turned and didn't look back as the officers put Liam in the patrol car. We heard the engine fade into the distance, taking with it the ghosts that had haunted this house for years. Eleanor didn't cry, but I saw her shoulders slump, finally releasing an unbearable burden. Weeks passed. Spring came to the valley, blanketing the fields in green. I had finished reorganizing the ledgers. With Davies and Thorne gone and a new, honest management, the ranch was beginning to recover. My work was done. One sunny morning, I came downstairs with my suitcases. Martha was in the kitchen making coffee. When she saw me, she dried her hands on her apron and looked down, hiding a tear. I went out to the porch. Eleanor was there, looking out at her pecan groves. She turned when she heard my footsteps and saw the luggage. "And where do you think you're going, Ava?" she asked, tapping the porch floor softly with her cane. "I'm leaving, Eleanor," I replied, forcing a smile. "The danger is gone. The books are balanced. You're out of debt. You're safe. My purpose here is finished. I don't belong in this house." "You're right," she said, walking toward me. "You arrived here a stranger, the naive fiancé of a man who didn't deserve you." I felt a pang in my heart. I tightened my grip on my suitcase, ready to leave. "But you're wrong about one thing," Eleanor continued, placing her hand over mine to stop me. "You are not leaving." "Why?" I asked, confused. Eleanor pulled an envelope from her pocket and handed it to me. I opened it. They were legal documents, not invoices or debts. It was a deed of co-ownership. "This ranch needs a manager with a head for numbers and the courage to face down wolves," Eleanor said, and for the first time, I saw her eyes shine with genuine affection. "You saved my life. You saved my legacy. Blood made us mother and daughter-in-law by mistake, but the fire made us mother and daughter by choice." I was speechless. Tears rolled down my cheeks. "Stay, Ava," she insisted softly. "Not as an employee, not as a guest. Stay as the Lady of Oak Creek. This is your home." I let go of the suitcase. There was nothing out there for me. My real home was here, beside this iron-willed woman who had taught me how to fight. I hugged her tightly. Eleanor, the woman who never hugged anyone, hugged me back, resting her head on my shoulder. "Thank you, my daughter," she whispered. We looked out at the horizon together, where the sun shone on the strong, ancient oaks. We knew other winters would come, other storms, but we were no longer afraid, because we knew now that as long as we stood together, no force on earth could ever bring us down. The story of Ava and Eleanor has reached its end, but its message endures. We often think family is only the one we are born into, but life teaches us that true family is forged in loyalty, respect, and mutual support in the darkest of times. We saw how a fragile young woman became a warrior and how a severe mother revealed a heart full of sacrifice. This story reminds us that it is never too late to start anew, that dignity is worth more than any inheritance, and that sometimes the hand that saves us is not the one we expected, but the one we needed most. May love and unity always be the greatest strength in your own homes. We want to be completely honest with you, our dear audience. To bring you this emotional story, we have combined human creativity with the assistance of artificial intelligence technology. Although the names, characters, and places you have seen are fictional and born of imagination, the heart of the story and the immeasurable effort of editing and narration are the result of dedicated and passionate human work, designed solely to provide you with the best possible experience. We hope you have enjoyed it.